Thank you, Arvid. I would like to start by thanking Duke and Arvid for this opportunity to come in and talk to you about something that I'm passionate about, which is emerging technologies. My name is Rebecca Mott, as you see there on the screen. And I am a utility professional, electric utility professional. I just crossed it's hard to believe, the 30-year mark as a utility professional and also an innovation leader. So I am ASQ, proud ASQ member, and am currently in the ASQ Innovation Division as the chair for 2024 for that community of innovators. And so it's my pleasure to be here today and to talk to you about mastering the digital symphony of emerging technologies. So what you might want to know about me and what might qualify me to speak a little about this topic. First of all, from a quality perspective, I have an background in my first part of my career was in laboratories. And so got a lot of understanding about what quality, the importance of quality when in terms of services, technical services that the laboratory was providing, got to lead audits and also be the subject of audits, which is fun. And that really is the base of my quality experience, and have all types of experience in various roles, most recently joining the IT part of my organization, which is Tennessee Valley Authority. We're the largest producer of public power in the US. And in my capacity there, working to launch our first ever innovation center, and then working on onboarding some new and emerging technologies and as part of our innovation network. I will say before I get started that none of the opinions that I express today represent Tennessee Valley Authority. These are my opinions and my opinions only. So I am happy to jump in and talk to you about this. But before we get rolling, I took a screenshot of a slide that was in Dr. Joseph DeFeo's presentation. And I'm going to slide it over here so that you can see it. And he talked on this slide about the impact of Quality 4.0 for quality professionals. What does it mean to you? And I looked at these bullet points, as Arvid mentioned. He shared this with me as I was preparing my talk. And I looked at this and I thought, really, our quality professionals, and in particular, if you are a quality leader, there are some things that you need to know to be able to mediate between stakeholders, to advocate on behalf of customers, to articulate increasingly complex work, and to communicate results to management. You really need to have a strong foundation and understanding of some major topics. So when I talk about mastering the digital symphony of emerging technologies, we're going to take a zoom out. And the vantage point of my presentation, I am, my undergraduate degree is in science. So I'm always looking at things and trying to figure out how do they work and how to make things work in a practical sense. How do you approach a project and make sure that as you're implementing the project, you're implementing it from a perspective of how can we make it work? How can we make it successful based on our scenario, based on our culture, based on the people that the project impacts and whom we're engaging with. And so this is the vantage point of my presentation today, and I'm using this analogy of a symphony I do not play an instrument. So if you do play an instrument, if you played in a symphony, then you could probably speak more detailed to this analogy, but I'm using it as a high level way of us understanding that when you look at an orchestra, everything is coordinated. You've got individual players, individual sections, people are doing different things, but at the end of it all, it is harmonized into something that is beautiful music to our ears. And so when I look at how we might approach Quality 4.0 and implementation of emerging technologies and integrating them into the way that we work, this is what we need to do, right? We need to understand how to harmonize these things, pull them together, and make it work in a practical sense. So before I get started, just to give you an overview of what's in this presentation, we've got the orchestral analogy. So I'll give you a zoom out view of what I'm the frame I'm building around that piece. I want to talk about the emerging technologies that were mentioned in the Giron presentation. We'll do a recap of those emerging technologies, in particular in the Quality 4.0 landscape, and some particular concerns that you need to pay attention to for those technologies. I want to talk about the roles supporting the digital symphony of transformation. So when you think about how you integrate Quality 4.0, and in particular, if you're taking that leadership role that was mentioned on that slide in the previous presentation and bringing those stakeholders together and figuring out how to make it work and harmonize it, what are those questions that you need to ask? What do you need to be asking yourself, your team, your colleagues, and what are those things you need to pay attention to? And I heard in the discussion, the follow-up discussion to the last presentation, a couple of things mentioned that we'll talk about, which rolls into the business ecosystem framework and also the change management strategies, which is the people part of the process. So you can't make processes work without people. And we have to understand how we support people through the change. And so I'll give you a framework to look at that. So in my analogy here of this digital symphony, I looked at what are the roles that bring together a symphony. So most of us know the conductor and the musicians, because they're the ones that are right there on stage that we see during the performance of the orchestra. But there are also some key roles that are behind the scenes that you may not see as leaders, but they are very important, strategically important to how that orchestra runs. So for example, you have the managing director, which if you're in a corporate structure, that would be someone like your chief executive officer, your chief operating officer, or your director level management. Then you have the conductor, which encompasses other leaders that are part of that leadership team, which may be your chief's office or your executive suite, your senior management team. You also have the concert masters, and these people are the most knowledgeable and skilled subject matter experts who serve as leads on the projects and initiatives. You have the music director who's responsible for the architectural design of the pieces that are played during the performance. And then you have section leaders that are leading each section of musicians that are playing the pieces together. So we'll take a deep dive into each of these roles and talk about specifically how they apply to what we're looking at from a digital transformation perspective. So when I think about Quality 4.0, I immediately think digital transformation. How do we use technology to transform the way we work? So I may slip in and out back and forth using those terms, Quality 4.0. So if you hear me say digital transformation, just mentally substitute Quality 4.0 as we're talking through here. So before I go to the next slide, I guess I would like to, you can come off mute and talk or drop it in the chat. And Arvid, I can't see the chat, so you may have to tell me what's in the chat. But which one of these roles, as you're looking at these roles, are you the most curious about?
I'm watching it for you, Rebecca. I'm waiting to see it. Don't everybody type at once.
And we'll dig into what these roles mean as it relates to again quality 4.0 and digital transformation.
I'm getting some now. I got 2 section leaders and a concert master.
Okay,
No, I got a section master, a section leader, and a concert master, and another section leader.
Yeah, concert master and section leader. Absolutely. So we'll dig into those two. So I'll pause on those two and we'll have some discussion on those two, but we'll talk about the others as well. So let's talk about when we say emerging technologies, what are we talking about? And so here is a representation of all of those technologies that when we're talking about the adoption of new and emerging technologies, we need to pay attention to. So everyone has heard of artificial intelligence, generative AI, it's everywhere. I just was in a conference early this week, Gartner conference, where just about every session the focus was artificial intelligence. So it is a hot topic. It is a lot of attention. It's getting a lot of attention. But these others that are not getting as much attention are also emerging and important. So you have the Internet of Things, which looks at the network of interconnected devices that are deployed in your factories. You have quantum and edge computing, which gives us extra computational power when we talk about having real-time data that we're collecting and then using that data, large sets of data, to make complex calculations and how that plays into it. You have blockchain and how we use that technology as a way of securely exchanging data without the need for intermediaries. We have augmented reality and virtual reality. And sometimes people don't know the difference between the two. So you can think about it in terms of augmented reality means I can see the space I'm in and I have virtual elements overlaid, versus virtual reality where I am completely immersed in the virtual environment. We have robotics, which was mentioned in the previous presentation, and that is something that is again a hot topic in terms of, in particular, inventory processes and looking at the supply chain in particular, and how we integrate robotics into that supply chain to make it more efficient. You have 5G and headed towards 6G, where we're looking at additional bandwidth and capacity to be able to exchange data over networks, mobile networks, which opens up a whole plethora of capabilities when you talk about working in a distributed systems. And then there's 3D printing and 4D printing, which doesn't have, if you're in the medical industry, you may have heard more about the 4D printing, but both of these technologies are being integrated into supply chain processes to, again, improve efficiency and to really meet tighter tolerances and better specifications for some products. So these are the new, when we say emerging technologies, these are all the collective technologies that we're talking about, but we can't leave cybersecurity and privacy out of the conversation. So underpinning all of these is this talk about how we keep cyber criminals and villains from getting in, controlling our systems, overtaking our systems, corrupting our systems, those bad actors out there. How do we take all this data that we're gathering and make sure that the right people have access to it, and we are protecting certain data, in particular sensitive data that we don't want to be in certain hands and we don't want certain people to see. So cybersecurity and privacy is woven throughout all of these emerging technologies. And then not on the screen, but just as important is cloud computing. So we talked about in the previous, after the previous presentation, we talked about big data. That's really what it's called, which is you have these, for example, an Internet of Things, where you have devices deployed that are collecting real-time information. And again, terabytes of data, not gigabytes, terabytes. And then where we're storing that data, how we're governing that data. And that gets into automatically, it becomes a cloud conversation because you don't have enough capacity on premise. If you look at our models, our previous models of how we handle data on premise with data centers, our own personal data centers and mainframe computers, it's a cost conversation, right? It is getting to a place where cloud is cheaper to host a cloud instance than it is to build your own data center and manage it. So that is really kind of, again, something that impacts a lot of these emerging technologies, because these technologies have to do with data. They're either generating data, consuming data, or using the data, manipulating the data in some way. And so we need high power capacity computing systems to do this. So I'll stop right here and see if there are any questions or comments.
I'm watching the chat.
All right, for the sake of time, let's get right into, well, what does this mean to me as a quality professional? So when you're looking at the Quality 4.0 landscape and you're looking at these technologies, what are some of the use cases? And then what are some of those impacts that you need to consider? And this is not a comprehensive list of use cases or impacts to consider, but just to get you thinking about, if you are looking at a particular new and emerging technology that you want to implement as part of your quality processes, what are some of the things that we can use that for? And then based on that, the impacts. So with augmented reality and virtual reality, it really gets down to making the workers more efficient. And there was a use case reference in the previous presentation about that. The VR being used to simulate environments, specifically to train people. So if you have a process, for example, uh, crane operations, forklift operations. So we've got to train these operators, and rather than training them on a physical device and exposing them to risk, we can put them in a virtual training environment so that they can build that acumen before they get into the seat of the actual equipment. Impacts that you need to consider here are around quality control checks and how inventory is managed, as well, again, as immersive learning experiences to train staff. So thinking about how you might use these technologies to help to train staff, especially for processes that introduce risk, or that you're concerned that if the person is not proficient when they enter the process, they may cause some problems with quality, right? So looking at it from both lenses there. Is anybody using augmented or reality or virtual reality right now? No one? One of the interesting use cases when we talk about um, compliance to procedures, one of the interesting use cases that I've seen is using the AR headsets, the augmented reality headsets, where you've got remote workers that may be out in a remote environment in the field or whatnot, and they're able to contact an expert through their augmented reality glasses, talk, chat with that expert, be able to show the expert what they're seeing, boots on the ground. So think about it as if you're a quality professional, someone calls you up and says, I've got a problem. I need you to look at this with me. And they're able to show you what they're seeing right there through their AR glasses. They're also, you're able to share documentation. They're able to call up documentation procedures and see them right there in their headset rather than having to rely on paper to communicate, with documentation. They can pull that documentation into their headset and read it. All right, robotics. Again, this is about, increasing the efficiency of your process. I call it reducing the dirty and dangerous work. So we have the robots to do that, but it's also in processes where you need a high level of precision. So if I've had the opportunity to tour the Volkswagen plant that's not far from where I live. We have a Volkswagen plant, and they have a whole section of robots that do most of the welding in the plant. And so we don't have people welding. We have these robots welding. They're faster, they're more precise in how they weld. And so when you look at it from a quality control, quality assurance perspective, it's a lot of benefits there. But, we also have to make sure that as quality leaders and quality professionals, we're engaged in those conversations so we don't have adverse impacts when robotics is introduced into a process, making sure that we understand how those robots are being used in the process so that we're not inadvertently causing problems in our supply chain process or manufacturing process. Anybody using robotics?
Eastman has robots in different places. We've had robot arms for doing some things for a long time. I think there are some around, and I know we went and visited a warehouse over in Johnson City, and they had robots running around doing things. David Barrett says, yeah, they have robots, pick and place and welding in the water heater business.
So one of the robots I'm familiar with that you may have seen is Spot the robot. Spot the robot is an autonomous robot. It can be operated autonomously and semi-autonomously. It can do walk down inspections, take pictures, video, record video on an inspection round. So where we may have had a human walking around for inspections, we can send a robot to walk that round for inspections. That's one use case I've seen with robots. All right, let's move on to Internet of Things. So these are, again, sensors that we're putting, sensors and devices we're putting it to collect real-time information in our process, and it helps us be more proactive, reducing time to identify and respond to issues. And when we're looking at this real-time monitoring data, there's an opportunity there also to look at the interplay of all the data that we're collecting. So not looking at the data as isolated to these individual devices, but how do we collect and aggregate that data, again, using cloud computing, using artificial intelligence, and make some real meaning of the data that can assist us in decision-making in our processes. The Internet of Things devices are everywhere, so I won't even ask because they're there, they're everywhere. I think just making sure that as quality professionals, we are aware of that inventory of devices and the data that's being collected from those devices, and thinking about how we might use those as that data as quality professionals. We got 3D and 4D printing. So 4D printing is really about this, like the next level where you're actually having the printer create objects that can change shape or properties based on response to stimuli. Again, that's more being piloted in the biomedical industry, but 3D for on-demand manufacturing of parts is definitely a use case. What we need to pay attention to there is compliance standards and making sure that we have those standards in place. We're working with the engineers and technical professionals to develop those compliance standards, because 3D printed parts do not equal parts that may have been forged or cast if you're using metal parts. If you're using plastics to replace metal parts, what does that look like, and what does the specification need to look like if we do that? So these are things that you have to think about, and again, collaborate with key stakeholders to figure out answers to these questions, and developing testing protocols as part of your quality assurance function. Anybody using 3D printing in a big way? No one?
Don't see anything. My
I
son
had a
has a
medical,
hobby.
I had a medical device client that was using 3D printing for printing devices that were used during knee surgery.
David says they're using it.
Any hard spots that you've had in implementing 3D printing or that you've heard? All right, well, we'll move on. So blockchain is a new and emerging technology. Again, when you look at how they might be used in processes to develop automated way of looking at specifications and matching the specification to, to the real-time data that's being gathered from from your manufacturing processes, can help improve the traceability of product origin and handling throughout the supply chain, to enhance transparency and reduce the potential for fraud. So blockchain has some real potential here. The problem with blockchain is it requires a lot of expertise, and a strong partnership with people who are implementing that technology in your company, to understand your processes and your needs, your requirements, and that kind of thing. But it can definitely enhance your process in terms of creation of those immutable records that you need for traceability and authentication. Is anybody using blockchain at all? If you are, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Don't see anybody typing anything.
Right? And then we have quantum and edge computing. So again, this is about that additional capacity for computational capacity for you to be able to take that data, and I keep talking about data in terms of tetrabytes, taking all of that data and using it to solve complex logistical problems, to improve forecasting in your processes, and to optimize your quality control processes. These are reality. So when we think about, for years we worked in spreadsheets, right? And spreadsheets were the thing. Now we're moving towards being able to take not a sample of the data, but all of the data, and look at it and think about how that can transform your quality control and quality assurance processes. Artificial intelligence, again, I won't even dig into that because we've talked about it. Just so many possibilities there for artificial intelligence to transform processes. And then the 5G and 6G I've already mentioned in terms of opening up capacity, especially as you're looking at distributed systems that you want to implement mobile technologies into your processes. You need that capacity and bandwidth to be able to communicate, transfer data, and whatnot over those mobile bandwidths. Anybody have any interesting use cases for quantum and edge computing, artificial intelligence, or 5G, 6G stories?
I don't see anything yet. You can take yourself off mute if you want to share, or type something in the chat. I don't see anything.
All right. Well, let's get on to what are the questions you need to be asked. So one of the things that, again, was pointed out in the previous presentation is engagement with key stakeholders, and how quality professionals will become more leaders in this space in terms of pushing these conversations forward in terms of how technology is used in the quality processes. So looking at that, we talked about the managing director. And again, this, depending on the organizational structure for your company, this can go as high as the chief executive officer, the chief operating officer. who is setting that vision and strategy for the company, and setting the tone for how technology is adopted in the company. Also allocating those resources so that you can innovate. You cannot innovate without resources. So let's just put that out there, and we have to understand what resources are needed, but we have to have the commitment for those resources to be able to innovate and really launch these technology projects in terms of improving our processes. And then just overall setting the tone to embrace change and technology advancement. And so this is kind of the tone of the top, and asking yourself, do we have that support from the top of our organization, from the top of our department, that is standing behind these initiatives that we may want to initiate, because it will be very difficult without that kind of alignment. And if you can tie it to the business goals, more the better. Just it's the same as with any of your KPIs, right? And your quality metrics. You want to make sure that it is aligned to the overall vision and business goals. And let's go on to look at the conductor, because we want to stop and have, talk about the concert master and the section leader. But when we're looking at the conductor, again, these are the folks in your process, again, usually at the leadership level, who are looking at more about how we ensure that these technologies integrate with our existing systems. What will we do to protect our data? Are we clearly communicating the benefits and the changes? So you've got leadership involved here. You have security and compliance involved here, which involves your cybersecurity. You have cybersecurity professionals as a part of your organization. My company has a chief information security officer, a CISO, that is strategic in these conversations, along with our cybersecurity professionals. You're looking at your chief information officer, or whatever leadership you have established for your IT department needs to be strategic to these conversations. Some companies have a chief transformation officer that kind of encompasses a lot of this, but these are the folks that need to be involved in the conversation to ensure that you have that harmony and integration, that you've got a priority on security and compliance, and that you set the right tone in terms of communication and leadership about the benefits of the change as you move forward. Okay, I hope can you all hear me okay? I have a dog barking in the back.
Yes, we can
Yeah,
hear
we
you.
can
Fine,
hear
we're
you.
fine.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the concert master. So when we talk about the concert master, these are your most knowledgeable and skilled subject matter experts who are going to serve as the leads on specific projects and initiatives. So think about your project leads. If you are looking at it from an IT perspective, these could be your full stack engineers that are leading up specific parts of integrating technology into the portfolio that you have at your company, your technology portfolio. And so, looking at how expertise is utilized, how you're driving continuous improvement using technical knowledge. So making sure that you're partnering with IT professionals. Making sure that you're partnering with your IT professionals to have those conversations, because it does take cross-functional collaboration. So when you look at expertise utilization, innovation and improvement, and cross-functional collaboration, for your organization, the question to ask are who are the people serving in the role of concert master for your organization, and making sure that you've established those working relationships to ensure that effective cross-functional collaboration. So the concert master really plays a very strategic role here. One of the things I think about when I think about integrating new and emerging technologies is that you also have to make sure that you've identified risks as you're transferring from the previous process. And in particular, if you're going from a legacy system to a more up-to-date modern system and transitioning all of that over, there's a lot of that opens up a lot of risk in the process, and making sure that you as a quality professional are integrated into conversations to discuss those risks that may come up for your process. What are your thoughts around this role of concert master, these skilled subject matter experts? Who are they in your organization?
We have a question from Keith Fong, who says, with regard to the concert master role with Quality 4.0, isn't it likely that the most knowledgeable people technically and even how to implement it are not the same people in leadership roles?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when I said, these could be subject matter experts, so full stack engineers, software developers, these could be subject matter experts embedded in your process, whatever your process looks like, because yes, you're correct. That expertise is what you're looking for, right? Are we using the expertise of our personnel in the process to identify how this technology is used to make it most beneficial, and to again, identify those risks in transferring from a legacy system over to a new system, changing from the old way we work to the new way we work, and definitely have to have those experts integrated into the conversation. So a very valid point that you need those subject matter experts at whatever level of the organization they may be.
Before we leave the managing editor, Keith also asked the question, what resistance do you see from the managing director level with respect to alignment and allocation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it just really depends on the tone of that particular leader. We have a very supportive leadership in my company when it comes to innovation in the pursuit of new and emerging technologies. But if you don't have that, it will be an uphill climb. And one of the things mentioned in the Huron presentation was making sure that you do quick wins, he called them. That is crucial if you're dealing with a situation where you do not have the managing director who is a cheerleader for innovation in new and emerging technologies. How do you get them on board and get them to see the benefits? You have to prove it, right? So what small projects might we do to be able to build that proof of concept, and take that proof of concept and turn it into a minimum viable product, and actually prove our case that this will improve our performance in some form or fashion. So going for those quick wins, building those small pilot projects, and you may even have to look at building a portfolio of those projects to really show the value of what technology can do. But great question.
So Rebecca, as I'm looking at this chart, most of the functions are singular except for musicians. Are we really looking at, like you said, the managing director as being the CEO? Is the conductor really like a project manager person, or is it a group of people that are coming together to make whatever it is that needs to happen? And then when we go down the list, you've hit on the concert master, but are we looking at individuals, or is the intent here to perform a function with a group of people coming together?
Right. Good question. I think it really depends on the structure of your organization, right? And so really what you're doing is taking these big buckets here. So for example, under this conductor bucket, you ask yourself here, who in my company would ensure new technologies integrate seamlessly with existing systems? Who would that primary group of stakeholders be? And it could be a group, right? Security and compliance, who has responsibility for that? Communication and leadership, at what level of your organization does it work in terms of communicating benefits and changes the technologies will bring? And that goes straight to the heart of your culture, right? So I think in terms of applying this model and looking at these questions, you really have to think about who are serving in these roles in your organization. I'm just giving some ideas based on my experience in terms of a matrixed organization that has a chief executive suite and multiple layers of management and that kind of context, but you have to apply it to your context. But great question.
Yeah, that's
Does that help?
Well, you make a good point, because one of the things that I'm encouraging future little, quality types coming out of these universities these days and other places in the armed forces and all, is to get well versed on project management skills and begin to understand and begin to look at this in kind of totality, because somewhere down the line, somebody's got to be the ringmaster. And just like you were talking about the conductor, when I look at a conductor, the person I'm going to go after is the project manager, the project lead person. That is the one that keeps the schedules. It is the one that, rides herd, and then comes to, the board of directors or whoever and says, to make this happen, I'm going to need these resources or whatever, or, we currently don't have this. And therefore, when I look at these future quality professionals as being the boundary spanners, or whatever word you want to use, they have to be able to talk both directions. They have to talk to the CEO in the language that the CEO understands, because a lot of these words that you're using are totally alien to them. So there's a little bit of education and training in that part. But at the same time, when you're bringing up from the bottom up, the people that are really tactical, that are going to actually write the code or actually buy the robot and validate it or whatever, they live in a totally different world too. And so integrating this, like you're talking about, regardless of the culture, still needs that conductor / ringmaster that rides herd over the rest of us, that is, monitoring and making sure things are happening as they should, when they should, and keeping the cost within whatever the structure is.
Yeah, very good observations. And I agree with that in terms of the language you speak is really important, right? And you are exactly right. You really have to do, I call it translating, right? You have to be bilingual in a sense to be able to, because when you're talking to the executive suite, what they really want to know, what they're most interested in is what's the value and how does this affect the bottom line. All right. Well, I'm just going to go through the others really quickly because I want to get to a couple of the other slides that I think will be beneficial in helping you understand how do you harmonize this and bring it all together. You have the music director. So these are really, I look at this as more your IT arm of the organization. So a lot of these technologies that you're talking about are heavy on having IT professionals involved in the conversation, right? So looking at, if you've got enterprise architects in your company, if you've got DevSecOps roles in your company, if you have IT infrastructure roles in your company, we mentioned data. So if you have people who have data governance roles in your company, these are the folks that you want to involve in the conversation as you launch on these technology initiatives to make sure that you have the right people involved to ensure architectural coherence. This is making sure the technology fits seamlessly into the entire technology landscape. So we're not looking at silos anymore. We're looking at this as a landscape, quality 4.0 landscape. And so this has to fit into the bigger picture. And then it has to be scalable and flexible. And the larger your company is, the more scalability and flexibility you need to have built into this. And then, of course, there's the performance monitoring and making sure that we're gathering the right data to and feeding the right data to the right places to monitor our performance, and how do we automate those processes so that we are not creating administrative burden, adding administrative burden and bureaucracy to our processes as we're adding these technologies in. So these are what I'm calling the music directors. Again, you have to think about it from your perspective and who these might be in your organization. Then you have these section leaders who are, I see this one is more boots on the ground. These are the folks that are really deep in the process, and they're ensuring that precision and unity of each member's contribution aligns seamlessly with the overarching pieces of your technology initiatives. And so I see this more as your project managers, actually, the conductors at more of a higher level. But again, depending on how your organization is structured, there may be some crosses here, right, between the conductor and the section leader. Because, when you look at the expertise utilization, we're down to those frontline workers, and do they have the specific skills and expertise to optimize the implementation of these emerging technologies? It has to work for the workers. And so these section leaders are looking at that piece of it. And so when I think about project managers, it's probably a blend between the conductor and the section leader in terms of how that works for some companies. And then the last piece, so also in the section leader bucket, we've got KPIs, innovation and continuous improvement, and then change management and adaptability. And so I'm going to hit some change management before I leave, because I want to leave you with that change management piece, which I'm very passionate about. We've got musicians. So these are the people that are boots on the ground and ensuring that they have the necessary skills to utilize technology effectively, looking at collaboration and adaptability. So are we building a collaborative environment that makes a dynamic system where people feel comfortable? So here's a term for you: psychological safety. I hope you've heard that term. If you haven't, I suggest that you go, think about it and go find out about it, because when we talk about, someone said technology, the elimination of jobs. Oh my goodness. So we don't want it to turn into that kind of conversation. We want our our frontline workers to be comfortable with the adaptation to these new technologies, and how do we create psychological safety in our environment where we can create feedback loops so that we are getting real-time feedback from our workforce on how these technologies are working for them, what's not working, and how we can fix it and make it work. Because again, we don't implement it with a naive way of looking at it that it's going to work perfect. We're just right out the box. We're right out the gate. We're going to implement it. It's going to be perfect. Of course, that's not how things work, right? So we got to have those feedback mechanisms, feedback loops, but we have to have an environment where people feel comfortable collaborating and providing that feedback, and they're open with it. And then when you look at all of it tied together, so this graphic, it's very busy, but the gist of this graphic is to talk about the different ecosystems that you need to pull together when you're looking at this, right? So you've got the technology layer, and then we talked about the people layer that was mentioned in the Huron presentation. And then you have your operations ecosystem, and then your customer solutions ecosystem. So more of the customer interaction, customer facing part of it. But all of these parts have to work together within the framework of implementing new and emerging technologies. So you cannot implement new and emerging technologies without looking at these 4 buckets and how they play together, how you need to bring them together when you're talking about the stakeholders you need to work with to implement new and emerging technologies, making sure that you are connected to the right places to have those collaborative conversations. So with those comes some challenges. And so I'll touch on a couple of these. One of them being the legacy challenge. So most people say the way it is just fine. Don't come changing my process. Don't come fiddling around with what I'm doing. It's working for me right now. And so making sure that, again, from a change management perspective, we've got a solid change management and communications plan to address some of those concerns, but also making sure we've identified all of those risks as we move from a legacy system onto a new way of a new system, a new way of doing things, that we have in that transitional plan identified all of the risks. And I think quality professionals play a key role in identifying those risks. You have that governance challenge. And so when we talk about, again, just using data as an example, looking at large-scale transformations requires an abundance of transformational activities. And you have to understand in your processes who has governance, who has the ownership for different pieces of the process that you need to pull together to implement new and emerging technology. And these conversations can be very interesting because you, again, may have to talk to cybersecurity. You're going to have to talk to your IT folks and pull them into the conversation. They'll have to be part of the team. You have to have your subject matter experts at the table so that they can identify some of the risks and help you with the transition into the new way of doing things. So that, you know, understanding who owns what in the process and what the roles are there is really key. And then really looking at the people challenge. So that's what I want to end on. And I know we're out of time, so I want to cover this really quickly and then point you to some resources. So when you're looking at sustainable change, this company is called PROSCI, P-R-O-S-C-I. If you haven't heard of them, they have a framework for change that is excellent to apply to any of your change initiatives. And I don't have time to dig into each of these components, but these are the major pieces. When you look at this ADKAR model, is how they say this, ADKAR, and looking at how you can articulate what is needed to support any change effort that you're on. And this speaks to that people ecosystem, because at the end of the day, even though the robot may take some of the work, we still have people in the process at the end of the day. And so how we support those people in the transition and how we help them to embrace the change is very key. Now, I want to leave you with these last resources, and thank you so much for your time. If you are an ASQ member, please log on to myasq.org and look for the innovation technical community. We have an innovation body of knowledge that we've published that can help you understand the key components you need to help you innovate at your company. So I encourage you to download that free resource. Eric Kimberling is a great person to follow if you're on YouTube and you want to understand more about digital transformation. ProSci.com is the change management folks that I just referenced. So if you want to understand more about change management, please visit ProSci.com. And then if you want to know more about some of these emerging technologies I've mentioned, Pluralsight is an online training provider. They have an option for you to take free training. You can go over there and sign up for their free training and learn about some of these new and emerging technologies. With that, I thank you so much for your time and your attention tonight, and I'll turn it back over to Arvid.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. That was quite informative. And you see, I've got my little buddy here, my son printed with 3D printing. That was my birthday present last year. So I don't know what he's going to print for me this year.
That's awesome.
He's a data scientist at Eastman now. So that's his hobby. One of his hobbies is 3D printing. So are there any questions as we get ready to wrap up and close for the day? I did not see any suggestions as to other topics, which I was disappointed. I was looking for that, but I didn't see any pop in. So if you want to email them to me, you're certainly welcome to do that. And we would appreciate some input into that. I have posted in the chat a book that Rebecca's talk reminded me of. It has nothing to do with her topic, other than it's also about the conductor. I'm going to stop the recording in a moment. If I can find my button here. I'm stopping the recording.